women in the GOP kind of run the show, and they do a darn good job. This is the second 2010 with the female GOP group ran a couple of debates for us, did a good job. They're the ones, if you look at the front page of the Rome News, we had one of our people in there talking about the Iraqi veterans coming to Rome on Saturday and helping with that. So if any of you ladies are at home and don't have enough to do, my wife doesn't say, she says she has too much to do, but if y'all want to help, the Women's GOP is a very good, strong group. They have speakers in all the time. Some of these candidates that I see right here have suddenly shown up at a lot of their meetings, and I think they realize that the women in our group run the show.
Smaller government, the scope of government, the cutting waste, cutting fraud, and looking for more money. Even now, when they talk about the 411 connector, they can't pay for it. We were talking in a meeting the other day at the Tea Party meeting. Mr. Doss even said we can't even make it a toll road. There's no money to put that in. So when I look at this and say, geez, how are we going to get more tax money to make the roads better? I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in finding where the waste and fraud is and correcting that. Then there'll be money to fix that road or build that road.
Well, Doug, I think that is a great question, because the polling data that I have seen all over the state indicates that T-Splosh is in trouble. Of the 12 regions around the state, the polling data shows that our district, it polls the worst. So I'm terribly concerned about what happens. And I am the guy who's uniquely qualified, that has spent 9 years on the State Transportation Board, that understands transportation funding. And I'm the only guy that has ever offered a statewide transportation plan that is multimodal, that encompasses everything from roads to bridges to ports to airports to bike paths to dirt roads.
T-Splosh does have some big issues. There's a stick put in there that penalizes communities that don't do it, and I don't think that's right. I'm not an opponent of sales tax, however. I'm a fair tax person, and I think we could look at that coupled with some tax decreases in other areas, such as property tax, and could support it. I know he talked about the plan that he had put forward, which was going to be the largest tax increase in Georgia history. And I think there's other ways to do it. We did it on the county commission. We found efficiencies, eliminated waste, and came up with dollars to do things without raising taxes.
I will take this from my generation's point of view. I'm the only person here that's not a baby boomer on stage. And I look at the baby boomers and I look out there, and it's a supply and demand scenario. And those taxes were an empire building scenario with lots of taxes involved to take care of a very large generation. My generation, with 10,000 baby boomers retiring each day and 10,000 baby boomers dying each day, my generation cannot even make up 1/3 of the taxes that were required to even cover your retirement.
You know, one of the numbers I heard was 200 million, and that's the amount of debt we're having to pay for past DOT projects. I think that's a department that's going to have to be seriously looked at. It's gotten an F for its accounting procedures too many years. They finally said today that they maybe think this year it's up to a C. Governor Perdue at the time called it Enron type accounting. Money was getting moved around. It's a big department. It's had a lot of problems. It takes 7 years on average to get a road, just to construction. And we've got one out here that's 30 years in counting, the 411 connector.
Well, Chuck, let me invite you down to Georgia DOT, just for your information. When I got there, we had 6,000 employees. When I left, we had 4,200. When I got there, we had not the greatest track record on program delivery. I made that a focus as my chairmanship, and just this year, Georgia DOT was named the #1 state in the nation on program delivery. So come on down and learn some things about DOT.
First ran in 2008, and during that year, expenses were $48.1 million. This year, expenses are scheduled to be $45.8 million, about $2.3 million reduction. Our revenue, 2008, $47.8 million. This year, we anticipate revenue to be $45.9 million. While our revenues dropped, I, along with my fellow commissioner, in the past 3 years, have focused on decreasing our expenses. That's the #1 thing we focused on. We knew we had less revenue to work with, and we have done that.
I have a lot of training and in other areas such as real estate and insurance. But my biggest asset is the years that I spent in the banking industry and also working for Western Baptist Church as their business administrator. I was a constant advisor and sometimes part of senior management, where we had to make those tough decisions on how do we get our expenses down, keep them down, how do we get our revenues up, how do we make things better, how do we survive as a company. Some of them didn't, but I can tell you this, I can bring that experience to the Floyd County Commission. We can apply that experience free of charge to the expenses and the budgets that we'll be faced with as commissioners.
I've been running a business in Rome and Floyd County for the 41 years, making the decisions about cutting costs. We're in a very grave situation in our county. I think we need to recognize the fact that our expenses must be cut. And I have learned through the past years' experience how to say no and when to say no. And we must carry that on into business and we must run our county as a business with more common sense in our local decisions.
Well, thank you very much for that question. There's just no question we must maintain the quality and level of services we currently have. The citizens of Rome and Floyd County expect and deserve the quality of services we have. So in my opinion, what we need to focus on is our tax base. We need to focus on increasing our commercial and industrial businesses.
I like the question. I like the question because I served on Citizens of Transportation Advisory Committee. That was before I was on the Planning Commission. That was almost 10 years ago. And when I asked the question, because we were moving appropriations money from the next year to the current year so they could do a right-of-way acquisition study, and I asked them, I said, are we still sure this is the best way to go? And the room was quiet, and I think they thought I'd slap somebody because it seemed like that was a determined course and that's where we were going. So the fact that we're asking the question now, North Floyd is there. They didn't need 411 to build there. They didn't need that connector. And I'm all for interconnectivity and everything else. But I'm still not sure if business is going to follow 411. You have to drive through a lot of Bartow County before you put an industrial park in Floyd on the county line. As a matter of fact, you pass an industrial park if you come in that way. So for business purposes, I'm not sure it's there. Now, for bringing people up here, that's one thing. But a lot of the businesses that come to this community fly into the airport we have, which is a great airport. And I think that that's probably a better destination of our funds here in our county than worrying more about 411.
Actually, I was on the original site committee that selected approached the site for the new Lowe's building for North Floyd Park. And one of the biggest one of the biggest points that we made that choice of was because of access. I think access through the 140 corridor is key to our success in that. It's going to continue to be the key to our success. Only thing about if we continue on with 411, it will create more success. Any kind of access that we can gain is going to make us better, make it more accessible, and bring the world a little closer to us.
Next month, I will be 50 years old. That's, 65 years old. And 50 years ago, I got a learner's permit to drive a car in Floyd County. And we were building a road called 411. And we were talking about how we were going to connect to the other interstate at that point. That's a half a century we've actually been talking about that road. The North Corridor on 140 is our connectivity. 50 years ago, it was important to connect to Atlanta. There was a Chevrolet manufacturing plant down there. There was a Ford manufacturing plant down there. There was a Lockheed making airplanes down there. Those things don't exist today. To get to the airport is very important. To get out of Rome, to go to Chattanooga to deliver brake drums is more important. To get out of Rome, to go toward LaGrange to deliver car parts is more important. Our connectivity is essential. We must connect to that interstate system to grow.